Join me on the ascending path towards consciousness, evolution, revolution. Hi, my name's Art Mancheno, and I'm going to share some insights with you. I had a question when I was real young, and that was, why am I here? Just trying to figure out, what is this ride about? And it was a question I could never shake. So around the age of 22, 23, I thought I had enough knowledge underneath my belt to sort of take a good guess at what this universe was about. I always held the greatest minds as something of a role. For example, Einstein, Tesla, Aristotle, even Jesus, Buddha, Confucius, so on and so forth. Wise people that had insights that were deeper in meaning than most others have access to. In this journey, when I first began, I realized I didn't want to start with the knowledge base I had. I had studied a little bit of basic physics, physiology, neurology, biology, etc., a lot of ologies. And I also knew that every, let's say 10 years, there's always a new groundbreaking realization in science that shows that, something we may have believed and held as ultimate truth has new understanding, deeper insights, or even a whole new way of looking at things. So I didn't want to start with the knowledge that I had. I wanted to essentially start with a blank slate. And so I started a questioning process. It was either my higher self I was talking to or a higher power or whatever. Either way, I was trying to logically approach this as the main point. And so I thought, okay, well, before I can start on this journey to seek higher knowledge, I ended up asking the first question, and that was, what am I? And the answer came to me that all we are energy instruments. What I mean by that is we've been given this form, our bodies, to perceive different energy forms around us. And with that information, we assess what reality is and our understanding of the universe. And everyone is different. Now, let me explain a little bit more what I mean by our body is sort of an energy instrument. So our eyes pick up light waves. Different colors have different frequencies, blue, green, so on and so forth. Your ears pick up sound waves, and sound waves are essentially molecules traveling in the air as waves until they hit your eardrum, and then you hear different sound frequencies, high, low, etc. Nose and mouth are chemical, and we have sensation. There's a lot more than the original 5, I believe it was Aristotle came up with. So we have more than the 5 basic senses. Now we know there's interoception. That's how we gauge our blood pressure. We sense temperature. Mechanoreception is one of the most important senses, I argue, and I'll explain later why. So essentially, all of these forms of information are coming to us. Our senses are picking them up, and we convert all of that information into electricity. And that's sent to your brain, and then you compute what is going on around you. The more perceptive you are, obviously, the more you're going to be able to judge correctly as to the nature of reality. And this realization led me to other insights further down the road, that the more information you are able to take in from your environment, the more correct, I believe, your worldview becomes. So it's important, the more information that you have access to around you, the more you're able to adjust to your environment. And so, okay, we're energy instruments. And I thought, okay, one of my favorite quotes, I think it's Einstein, that says, the simpler you can explain it, the closer you are to truth. And I thought, well, even though that's a very simple understanding of what I am, I thought, again, I wanted something simpler, so I asked again, what am I? And it came to me that basically all we are is mass. So, and I knew from basic physics that mass has an integrated property for all time space, as far as we know. And the bigger the mass, like for example, the Earth is big enough to hold the moon because the Earth is bigger than the moon. So the moon spins around us. And the sun is bigger than the Earth, and it holds all the planets, including us and our moon. So the bigger the mass, the more the gravitational pull. And I had one insight from a teacher that mentioned if there was nothing in space and you were able to put one grain of sand on one end of the universe, if that were possible, and another grain of sand on the opposite end of the universe, if that were possible, there would still be a gravitational attraction as small as that is. And that's my mind would immediately telescope and think, well, geez, that means that everything has an effect on everything. And it seems like that is the nature of the universe. There's sort of I believe now that there's an entanglement that was created if there was a Big Bang and everything was an element, we were all entangled. That's when we were truly one. So anyway, going back to this, gravity, mass, all we are is mass, has a property of gravity. And let me differentiate between mass and weight. So while we're made up of the same amount of stuff, we go to the moon, we're going to be made up of the same amount of stuff. We weigh ourselves on Earth. Let's say you weigh, 195 on Earth. You go to the moon, because it has less of a gravitational pull, you're going to weigh less on the moon, but you're still made up of the same amount of stuff. So once I got this simpler answer, we are mass, and at the time I had already come across some information that allowed me to have insights far deeper than the thoughts, would normally go if I didn't have this information. For example, I'd come across a friend who was doing a neurology program, and, it sounded very interesting what they were covering. And so I asked him one day, finally, I'm like, why don't you tell me one of the coolest things that you learned from taking this course? And he mentions, well, there's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system, and it's responsible for focus, awareness, arousal, consciousness. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. It sounds pretty amazing. And it's one of the first, if not the oldest, parts of the brain that we developed. It's part of the brainstem. So, that's one of the first things we developed is we evolved as organisms. So it must be super important, I thought. And he threw in there that it's also responsible for maintaining your posture or anti-gravity muscles. And he gave me this example. He said, when you're a baby, you're hunched over like this in a fetal position. And as your brain develops, your posture becomes straighter and you hold yourself like this. And so as you age, a person's mind declines, and you've noticed that people tend to hunch over again. So immediately I associated, and as it turns out, I understood that I was thinking, okay, can you reverse engineer this? I thought it was very interesting that all the things that he was talking about had to do with mind, consciousness, focus, awareness. And then he throws in anti-gravity, which is a muscle, physical component. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if you could reverse engineer that and trigger levels of focus and awareness by stimulating your postural muscles through exercise? And as it turns out, this part of the brain facilitates the posture and the focus. So by exercising, you have to maintain a certain posture. If you're doing curls, it's going to pull you forward a bit, and you have to offset that by, tightening up your muscles in the back. So you're activating actively your reticular activating system by trying to maintain postural control. This, at the same time, causes it to make you more focused and aware. So, and what's really important about this is that intelligence agencies have found that Now we're going to talk about more esoteric knowledge here that in order to affect your environment more, have a greater effect, there's, electromagnetism going on. This is an energy system. Everything is energy. And I just explained to you that body is essentially an energy instrument. Well, there's magnetism that's generated from the electrical flow. And one of the greatest ways of empowering yourself literally is through exercise. Playing with gravity causes your mind to become more focused and aware. Now, this makes a lot of sense if you take into account, like, let's say, hunters. If they weren't able to kill their food and, they had to pursue it, they would die off if there were no other food sources available. So the mind, or the brain, it's very important for it to become more focused as they're running around trying to chase down an animal. You have a higher degree of success in that regard. So, these things are somewhat overlooked. There's a lot of knowledge out there now, based on the reticular activating system and its importance. But what's been overlooked is the role of how it affects your anti-gravity muscles and how you can use one to stimulate the other. If you like what you heard, please click the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified when I put out a new video, and hit the like button. Sharing also helps. I appreciate your time and I hope you learned something. Thank you. Bye. Join me on the ascending path towards consciousness, evolution, revolution.